pay attention very, very carefully because I'm going to put all of the passive voice, our topic for this session, with several chapters. First of all, chapter 29 in your book on page 138, page 139, are simply vocabulary items, alter, uter, and uterque. So I'm not going to spend class time on that right now because these are things that you can simply make flashcards out of and as a vocabulary item. But I'm going to start with chapter 30, and in my presentation right now, I'm going to include 30, 31, 32, which is right to the end of the book here. This will finish off the book. It is the passive voice for all conjugations, all tenses, and we're going to do that in this presentation. So while I'm doing that, you might want to have your book out and have your thumb in the chart in the back of the book. On page 157 are all of the active forms that we have covered. On page 158 are all of the passive forms that we're going to cover in this presentation. So you need to be very, very thoughtful. And I'm not going to necessarily do it in the order of the chapters here. I think I'll just start at the beginning with present tense and move right through, right up to the future perfect. Okay? It's really very simple. This is a lot more simple than learning the active. First of all, what is passive? Passive is the opposite of active. We have voice. Voice indicates whether something is being done to an object or whether something's being done to a subject. And we use active about twice as much as passive in English. And of course the Romans would be the same kind of percentage. All right, let's again refer to something we're familiar with our own English language. Again, you're learning English grammar from Latin. Okay, the boy carries a stick. That is an active sentence. The subject is doing the action. Here's a direct object here. What is he carrying? A stick. Something we're very familiar with right from chapter 1. Puer, and again I'll use typical English word order, carries, let's use portat. I could have used fert, but let's keep it regular. And the word for stick is a baculum. It's a neuter noun, baculum. The boy carries a stick. Now you can take any active sentence in any language and make it passive. How do we make this passive? By doing this. The stick is being carried. Notice I have to use all these little helping words here in English. By the boy. Okay. This is what we're going to be focusing on today, folks. This is a passive sentence here. The stick is being carried by... This is still a sentence. You've got a subject. Notice there's no direct object. Instead of a direct object, you have here an ablative of agent. If it's a person, it's going to be agent, and you're going to have a preposition. If it's a thing, it's going to be instrument, and a preposition is not needed with a thing. But you will have this by the something in English. And of course, your verb is passive in form. And in English, we do this by throwing in all these helping verbs and a past participle. I'll be talking about past participles in a few minutes. If you're using your book, this is probably in chapter 32. I've gone forward a little. But I'm just going to be doing it. I'm going to be doing present, imperfect, future, perfect, pluperfect, future perfect, passive, like that. Okay. So the boy carries a stick. This is an active sentence here. So active means that the subject's doing the action. And a direct object is receiving the action. Passive means that the subject is being acted upon by an object or instrument. And you'll have a prepositional phrase in English there. All right, so that's the essence of what active and passive means. So subject is being acted upon by an agent. Here the subject is doing the action. So that's the difference, active, passive. Now what does this look like in Latin? Now that we know what that looks like. By the way, you will see this on your National Latin exam. You will see this. They do bring in the passive here. Okay, here we go. Let me switch to black here again. I'm going to talk about just the forms now. We need to, in the active voice, we had O, S, T, mus, tis, and NT as personal endings. Okay, remember these? You memorized them 1,000 years ago in Latin 1? O, S, T, mus, tis, NT. These are the personal endings that not only tell me who is doing the action, amo, amas, they also tell me that this is active. Because these are active personal endings. We forgot to tell you that, didn't we? Because you're going to have a set of passive personal endings. Passive personal endings. And they're going to be ar, ris, tur, mur, mini, that is an N there, and entur. And of course you'll have, depending on the conjugation, you're going to have different vowels in front of these endings, depending on the conjugation. And they're all illustrated there for you on page 158 in the chart. So this is something we're familiar with already. This is new today, and you guessed it, you're going to have to memorize those endings. Ar, ris, tur, mur, mini, entur. If you can do that, then you have already gotten down the passive for the present system, present, imperfect, and future tenses, which are built on the present stem. Okay, so let's go to present tense here. Present passive, because we're going to do all 6 tenses here. So you need to stay awake if you can. If this gets a little bit too tedious, hit the pause button on your computer or your machine, whatever you're playing this VCD on, and go out and get a breath of fresh air and then come back. And then we'll get into this here. Okay. Here, remember amo, amas, amat, amamus, amatis, aman, I love, you loved. How about if I say, I am loved, you are loved, he is loved, we are loved, y'all are loved, they are loved. How do I say that in Latin? Well, we're going to use amor, amaris, amatur, amamor, amamini. There it is, mini, amantur. Okay, and this is all, if you want to follow me along in your book, on page 158. Let me make sure I'm not giving you the wrong directions here. Yes. There they use paror. Paror, pararis, parator, paramor, paramini, and parantur. And they have all 4 conjugations right across there on page 158. You can't see that page with the camera, but there it is. You've got your own book there. And I'm just going to keep that book open so I can refer to it there as we need to. So there's your present tense. You do this with any verb. If this were rego, same thing. Regor, regaris, regaris, regator, regamor, regamini, regentor. Audior, same thing. Audieris, audiator, well, that'd be the future. There it is over there. Audiris, right? It keeps the I. Audior, audiris, auditor, audimor, audimini, audiuntor. All you're doing, folks, is switching hats here. Instead of using these, you're using these. So if you remember, the key is to know these 6 endings. And you've got this. If you know this, you've got this. Because look at, all we're doing here is we're taking these off and substituting ar, ris, tur, mur, mini, and entur for what we had, like nt there, now it's ntur. When it was just o there, now it's or. So if you wanted to, you could easily say it's or, ris, tur, mur, mini, entur. Okay? Because if you understand this much, as we move into the imperfect and future, it's a piece of cake. Well, let's do it right now. Here's the imperfect. Switching to my blue. And as I said, this is for all 4 conjugations. Okay. Let's take, for the active endings, it would be bam, bas, bat, bamus, batis, bant. Well, we're just going to switch hats here. Bar, baris, batur, I know you can't see because I'm in the way, but I'll move out of here. Bomor, Bomini, and Bontour. Okay, you stick that onto the stem of the verb, and there you have it. So the active would be bom, bos, bot, bomus, botus, bont. The passive is bar, baris, bator, bomor, bomini, bontour. Very simple. Bar, baris, bator. I was loved, you were loved, he was loved. We were loved, y'all were loved, they were loved. And you do that with any verb. You have the same vowel combinations that you would have in the active voice. Okay? So I was loved by my mother for many years. I was loved by my mother for many years. So what would that look like in Latin? I was loved. I'm a bomb. I'm into the future too sad. I was loved by my mother for many years. Multos, there we are. Anos. Here's the accusative of the extent of time. I don't need a preposition, I just put it into the accusative. I was loved for many years by my mother. A matre mea. You don't have to put mea in there, it's understood. Or you could. A matre mea. I was loved for many years by my mother. And this is called the ablative of agent. It has the preposition a or ab in front of in front of its object. Whenever you have a person, you're going to have a preposition. And if you don't have a person, for example, he was hit with a stick, then you simply have the object in the ablative without any preposition at all. It's called the ablative of means or instrument, which we've gone over before. But you'll always, that's the hallmark of a passive sentence. Okay, there you see the imperfect. Let's go to the future. And I'm keeping these up here because they're still relevant. The future passive, remember for the first and second conjugation, do it one way? Well, they're going to put bore. Instead of bo, bis, bit, bemus, beatus, bunt, they're going to put bore, beris, you would expect beris, but it's beris, betur, bemore, bimini, and buntur. Bore, beris, betur, bemore, bimini, buntur. Those are the passives. See how you're switching from here? Bo, bis, bit, bemus, beatus, bunt, to bore, beris, betur. So if you know your active and you know these, then you know the passive. That's why we can teach these all in one lump in this presentation. So let me repeat that. If you know your active, your present active, imperfect active, and that would be on page 157, and future active, then the passive is simply a matter of substituting these endings for these endings. There might be a case where you have a little bit of a, you'd expect an I in here that's an E. Again, memorize. Bore, beris, betur, bemore, bimini, buntur. Now what about the third and fourth conjugation? Remember the active was am, as, et, amus, atus, ent. Well, you simply switch hats. Eris, atur, amor, emini, entur. I will be ruled. Regar, regaris, regatur. I mean, where are we here with the future? Let's see. There it is. Regar, regaris, regatur, regemini, regamor, regemini, regentur. So you're just switching again these endings for these endings. Remember the active was am, as, et, so it's ar, eris, atur in the third, fourth conjugation. Fourth conjugation, we have that I before the E in the combination there. So you're just taking the verbs on page 157, you can see this for yourself, and you're switching the personal endings. Okay? So that takes care of our present system. It's called the present system because it's built on the present stem of the verb. What's left after you cut the RE off the second principal part. That's the present stem. And from the present stem, we form the present, imperfect, and future tenses. That's why it's called the present system. Now, having said that, I'm going to move to the perfect system for the perfect passive. Okay? So I don't need these. I don't need these anymore. Because in the perfect system, we're going to do something different. Something easier. Actually, it's easier to learn the perfect system than the present system that you've already had the hardest part of this. Okay, the perfect system is built on the perfect stem. We know that. That would include the perfect tense, the pluperfect tense, and the future perfect tense. Okay, let's go up here and see what I'm talking about. We always start with principal parts. So let's take amo, amare, amawi, and finally we're going to use this guy at the end here, the supine, and we're going to change it into a participle. And this participle is called the perfect passive participle. Finally, this guy is going to have a job. This is translated as loved with an ED on it in English. So if you want to translate the supine, or what we're going to call now the perfect passive participle, the past participle, you just translate it with an ED. All right. So and this is also, since it's a participle, it's going to be a first and second declension adjective. So as far as we're concerned, this is an adjective in the first declension, amatus, amata, amatum. And we're going to use that with the verb to be. Now, do you remember the verb to be? Present tense, sum, s, sumus, est, sunt. If you don't remember it, it's all in the back. Well, it's on page 159, right across the street from page 158. There you have it down the line. Sum, s, sumus, est, sunt. That's the present. Eram, eras, erat, eramus, eratus, erat. That is the imperfect. And then ero, eris, erit, erimus, eritus, erunt. That's the future. Let me just pause it right now, and I'll come back to this in a few minutes. To Skippily, we have completed our discussion of the present passive system, the present, imperfect, and future, built on the present stem. That's why it's called the present system. Now we're going to move to the passive of the perfect system. In the perfect system, we have the perfect tense, the pluperfect tense, and the future perfect tense. And guess what? It's very easy to learn. This finishes up chapters, should be chapter 31 in your book. In fact, we're going to finish up the entire book with this presentation. This is very simple. Again, you want to go to your principal parts. Amo, amare, amawi. See how important principal parts are? And I'm going to change this supine here from amatum to amatus, And that is an M there. Looks like a hill. But anyway, amatus, because it's going to become a first and second declension adjective, and we call this the past participle. Remember when we talked about the present participle, the loving mother, the falling leaf? This is the mother who loved. The mater amata. The wounded soldier, miles vulneratus. So this here is an adjective. It's a participle, it's an adjective. It's a verb and an adjective, therefore it's a participle, but it's the past participle. Now here's how simple this is. Do you remember when I said the key to knowing the present system were the personal endings are, ris, tur, more, many, intur? It took the place of o, st, mus, tis, nt. Well, the key to knowing the perfect passive system is knowing the present, imperfect, and future of the verb to be, which should be on page 159 in your book, or thereabouts, with the irregular verb. Okay? So, if you know the sum, es, est, sumus, est, sunt, eram, eras, erat, eramus, eratus, erant, ero, eris, erit, erimus, eritus, erunt, you already know it. You already know the perfect system, because here's what's going to happen. Let me take amatus and write it out 6 times. Remember, verbs come in 6-packs. Right now I'm going to be doing the perfect passive. I have been loved. You have been loved. Notice it changes to plural in the plural. Amati. So many people forget to do this when they're making charts. What the book calls paradigms. A chart. Okay, since this is an adjective, a participle, it agrees with the subject. I'm assuming that the subject of this verb is masculine because I have a US. If it's a feminine subject, it's going to end in A. If it's neuter, it'll be a UM. And if it's feminine plural, it'll end in an AE. Because this reflects the subject of whatever, who it is. Now, here's the simple part, folks. Let me change colors here, just to emphasize how simple this is. This is actually going to be a second word. This is not an ending. It's a separate word. Sum, we're not used to seeing helping verbs in Latin, but this acts like a helping verb. Okay, we're so used to seeing one word be a whole phrase in English, one word in Latin. There it is, folks. There is the perfect passive. All I did was take the fourth principal part of the verb, put it here 6 times, of course turning it into a first and second declension adjective, and add the verb to be. I have been loved. You have been loved. He has been loved. If I wanted to say she has been loved, it would be amata est. They have been loved, or excuse me, we have been loved, y'all have been loved, they have been loved. Simple. There's really nothing else to say. There it is. That's as hard as it gets. This is the perfect tense. And you can follow along on page 158. You can see the chart there. Here is the imperfect. Only your book doesn't write out all the words here, the helping verbs. I do, because you're going to get your money's worth with me. Eram. This is the pluperfect. I had been loved. I'll move out of your way in a minute here. Eratis. Erant. There you are. Amatus eram, amatus eras, amatus erat, amati eramus, amati eratis, amati erant. Pluperfect tense. I had been loved. You had been loved. No problem? This is as hard as it gets. There you are, folks. This is the pluperfect passive perfect system. For any verb, this is not just first conjugate. Any verb is treated this way. If this were third conjugation, if this were rego, regere, rexi, rectus. So I had been ruled, rectus eram, and so on. Future perfect, same logic. We're going to take the future of the verb to be with one little quirk at the end here. Ero, eris, erit, erimus, eritis, and we're going to put errant in here rather than errant so it doesn't get mixed up with the perfect passive. Here's your future perfect passive, future perfect. I shall have been loved. You will have been loved. He will have been loved. We shall have been loved. You will have been loved. They will have been loved. See that? That's as hard as it gets. So the key is knowing the present, imperfect, and future of the verb to be so that you can form the perfect, pluperfect, and future perfect of any verb in Latin. Okay? Now, we're going to move over here and focus on this for just a second as I wind this up. I've told you about the past participle here. This is used to form the perfect passive system. It's also used by itself in a sentence as a regular adjective. If I say, the soldier, Miles, was wounded by a sword, vulneratus gladio, no preposition in front of gladio because it's ablative of instrument, was dead. Erat mortuus. Okay, this would be a predicate adjective here, the verb to be. A soldier wounded by a sword was dead. There you are. You're using this as just a regular adjective here. So the translation is always an ed, wounded, loved. If it would be an ed, and whatever it would be up here. Okay? A house built on sand will not stand. Okay? Built. Casa edificata. Okay? In arena. On sand. Okay. So there's the use of we've learned 2 participles. A present participle ends in ing in English, ends in ns or nt in Latin. It's a third declension adjective. And we've learned the perfect participle, which is basically the fourth principal part of the verb. So now we have a use for this supine at the end, we call it. If it ends in um, it's a supine. If it ends like this, and some books use the participle rather than the supine, then it's just a regular participle. That's what it is. Okay, so this wraps up the book. This winds up the part 2 of the course here, and the next presentation will be part 3. Part 2 is finished, right up to chapter 32. Multas gratias vobis, discipuli.